Well, in terms of external reviews, we do externally review our services in a lot of areas, including mental health. We've already had external reviews in relation to Manannan Court and the mental health service. The person that we're looking to undertake this review is Dr. Tommy Dickinson. He's previously reviewed the service. He was over-reviewing the service in 2016, made several recommendations, and then came back and peer-reviewed the introduction of those recommendations. I think it's good practice, to be perfectly honest, that every so often we have external reviews of the service, and I think it's a timely time to do it.
So this is just a routine review. This has got nothing to do with some of the claims made about problems there with a number of anonymous sources.
Well, if you actually read the full statement the department's put out, the department has actually come out and pointed out that a lot of the claims that have been made have no foundation. So, for instance, one of the claims that was made was that there was a huge amount of self-harm going on in the unit. The department's been quite open. We gave out to the media the actual figures on self-harm in the unit, which do not correlate with what the accusation is. So I hope people will take the time to read the department's very in-depth, point-by-point response to the accusations that have been made. But these accusations have been made. So let's actually be open, and it's a good time to have an external review.
Is it inherently difficult to put numbers and facts and figures on something which is basically down to people's personal experience of something like this? We're talking about mental health. We're talking about distress. You can't put numbers and things. It's not always down to self-harm or the most extreme cases.
No, and that's why we actually have an independent review board as well that goes in and oversees the mental health service. The independent inspection reports are made available publicly. They have been in, they did Manannan Court, I think it was the back end of last year, and found that morale in the unit was good, and that they found that the unit overall was run well. So we do have these reviews quite consistently, and we do have monitoring in this area.
In terms of staffing, that's one point that's come up a couple of times recently, in the sense that there are, of course, measures in place when there was an unusually high amount of people absent in December. Mm-hmm. Now, that was down to purely high levels of illness. We've seen that island-wide, as well as coincidentally, acute illnesses happening at the same time. But what measures are in place to be able to fill that void? Because a lot of the overtime on a voluntary basis, it's on a voluntary basis and it's not enforced.
Well, let's not forget we have a pool of bank staff across the health service. Mental health is no different. In the same way as we've had conversations before about the bank staff that are used in hospitals, it's exactly the same for the mental health service. There is a pool of bank staff that can be called in to cover shifts. I think one of the key points as well, which you've just mentioned there, is overtime. If people wish to do it, it is voluntary. Again, one of the accusations and the way it was being made was suggesting that people were being forced to do these huge amounts of overtime, and that's simply not the case. If people wish to do the overtime, it's voluntary. But again, the service takes a sensible view in the fact we wouldn't particularly want someone working exceptionally excessive hours, because that's not good for them and it's not good for the delivery of the service either.
How big is the pool of bank staff?
Off the top of my head, I don't have the figures, but I believe it is quite a wide-ranging pool, and we've never had a problem in terms of being able to pull people in to cover shifts. As you mentioned, December was, should we say, an interesting month, and it was a perfect storm, as is again laid out in the full statement, with various reasons as to why people were off. There was the general sickness, and then there was also other couple of reasons as well, which we've laid out.
Well, is there any reassurance you would like to give to people who may have some fears regarding recent media coverage?
I think one of the unfortunate things about the recent media coverage is it has caused fears. I have had, for instance, I've had in contact with me a constituent who uses Manannan Court. He's a service user of Manannan Court, and he's actually quite upset because he said the way the coverage has come out, it's made it sound like everyone in there is these dreadful people when they're people with problems who are seeking help. And he was actually quite distressed as a patient going in occasionally to in and out of Manannan Court. He was distressed by the coverage because he felt the way it portrayed him and other people using the services wasn't good from his point of view.
Well, we'll certainly hope that the external review is coming out in April. Or it's being
It'll
done
be
in
undertaken
April.
in April.
Right. So do we know when that might be completed, and will those results be public?
Yep, the review will be public. We're open and transparent as a service. And as I say, this isn't anything new. We have peer reviews from time to time. And also we have the Independent Monitoring Board as well that goes in and actually has looked at it. And as I say, from memory, I think it was the back end of last year, their last report, and they found that the service was okay.
And just to touch on, you said that these routine reviews are, of course, extremely useful and something that you will always welcome. How often do you have them, or would you like to have them?
Well, like I say, we have the independent monitoring via the Mental Health Board that is done quite regularly. Then we can have peer reviews, which we request on a one-off basis, which is this. What is important is there is continual oversight, and that's true across all of DHSC's services. Let's not just limit it to mental health. I've said since day one when I became Minister of the Department that it's important that we have independent oversight of all our different services. But what is equally important is when claims come forward that have absolutely no foundation, that the Department is right in going out publicly and giving the facts and disputing those claims that are incorrect.
When it's a number of similar complaints, though, can you say there's no foundation?
Well, the Department has proved it, that we've given the factual answers. Obviously, there's certain things where there is an element of truth to them. But there is some things that are completely and utterly factually incorrect, and the Department in the statement, which I hope people will take time to read, and all credit to Isle of Man newspapers, they've published the full statement on, I think it was page 3 of the paper yesterday. I hope people will take the time to read it and actually see what the true picture is.
And is that on the government website as well?
And the statement is on government website.